Hey everybody, it's your girl Natasha Bino here for the African Diaspora Institute of Cultural Exchange and Historical Research, better known as C.E.R. And today I am so honored and so happy to have a storyteller, educator, motivator, architect for social change and cultural awareness. His name is Usifu Jalloh, right? Am I pronouncing your last name correctly?
Jalloh.
Jalloh, sorry. Usifu Jalloh is a highly experienced, talented, award-winning performer and educator who has been working in arts of education for over 20 years. His roots in multicultural Sierra Leone and his birthplace at that, and his long-standing and close association with artists and audience from a wide range of cultures have led him to develop a storytelling style which encompasses international languages, music, dance, and story themes. He was born in the northern part of Sierra Leone, and he's also worked with BBC as well, and he's worked with a number of festivals and storytelling organizations. And one thing I am so pleased to have him on with us today. Today's topic is definitely, we'll be talking about amazing narratives from Africa, the paradigm shift stories that he's come across throughout his travels. Now, listen, you want to talk about well-traveled man? You talk about me traveling. Oh my goodness, stuff who puts me to shame. Okay, absolutely put me to shame. But most importantly, I love his name. I love his name. He's also known as the Cowfoot Prince.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. Very, very good.
That's good. So now, Mr. Cowfoot Prince, how did you get that name first and foremost before we get into today's topic?
The idea of the Cowfoot Prince, it came about relatively casually when I was planning for a show, and then I decided to call the show Cowfoot.
Okay.
But little did I know that the ancestors were giving me a lot of they were giving me information that is deeper than what I kind of bargained for.
Mm-hmm.
But later on, as time moved by, I realized, hang on a second, my nationality, part of my nationality is Fulani, and Fulani people are synonymous to cattle. We always raise cows, and we travel across the Sahel of Africa, mostly with raising cattle, grazing cattle from place to place. So cows is a very significant part of my culture. And then he started waking up, realizing, oh, hang on a second. So, cow footprints. So I am doing and being what is very much steeped within my own heritage, whether it is theater, storytelling, whatever I am doing as a person, I am doing it always within the context of my own culture. And that has helped me to become very, very successful in many, many different ways. So I now say then I looked at the idea of the Cowfoot Prince and understood that, okay, cow is my culture, the foot is being grounded in it. And then once you are grounded within your own natural culture, your own natural self, you inevitably will become successful. You will become a prince or a princess, if you want to put it that way. So culturally, it's that way, but individually as well, it is about what's your own gift? What have you brought to this earth to make you, or to come and serve this earth? What have you brought? So, among the Yoruba people, they say before anybody is born, the last thing you choose before you come to this earth is your ori, your head. In other words, your talent, your gift.
Okay.
So you choose that gift, and that gift is your tool. It is your tool to come and work on this planet Earth, to serve nature, to serve nature. And so once you choose that gift you're born, your initial work is to practice, is to sharpen that tool, that talent, that gift. And then once you've got to use that now to serve everything else based on what is given to you, use it to serve. So that is how I see myself. When I found my gift, which is in storytelling, which is in helping people getting back to their, understanding their culture, advocacy for on social issues. Once I figured out that this is really what I'm cut out for, and the tool is actually storytelling. That's the tool, and I'm using that tool as my talent. And I think so that tool becomes my cow foot, if you like. And with that tool, I'm able to become, again, successful. As I travel around the world, as I do what I do, get paid wherever I get paid, and so on. So that is how I interpret.
One thing, seeing you in action and performing live, it gives me goosebumps because there's very few. I've worked in the industry, music industry, for over 25 years. I'm giving away my age. But you're like one of the very few. I'm gonna call you artist as well. As a storyteller, where you can actually see the energy work through you. You can actually see the transformation. From Usifu to storyteller. And I can see the ancestors working through you. And it's absolutely divine. It's wonderful to watch because it really draws you in as the viewer, and you actually become part of the story, which, let me tell you, that to me is one of the hardest part, is to actually draw that person in,
Yes.
and keep them there. And you definitely have that talent.
Yes, thank you very much. I do my best to keep people, because when I do storytelling, I do not tell a story that I don't see myself in. I have to see myself in this story, and I think it's very important. So I am actually living a story. So when I'm there, I am as bare and as vulnerable as it's possible to be, and I think that is a key element in making any artist a great artist. That you're in your art.
Now, with storytelling, before we get to the topic really quickly, in regards to on the African landscape, storytelling is used very commonly in various cultures, correct?
Oh, very, very commonly, yes. It's very, very common.
Okay.
Storytelling is incredibly common. I don't think there's any African village, town, wherever you might go, that do not have storytelling one way or the other. I don't think there's any place.
Have you heard of maybe same story, but when you go to village to village, the story changes to reflect the various meanings or the
even country to country?
Okay.
I've heard the same stories, but it just changes based on the environment of the country. But exactly the same story.
Okay. I'm gonna put you in the spot, actually. So, okay, as a researcher, and traveling throughout Ghana and part of Burkina Faso, I realized when it came to the creation of villages and the creation of different societies, it always came down to a warrior, water, and an evil spirit. And it's always, sometimes you might find a disabled person, someone with a foot shorter than the other, or some type of, challenge. Why is that? And I find it's that with the Fantis, it's that with various different societies. It's always, especially the Mosi, with the Gomba up north, with the warrior seeking refuge and going to speak to a native of that particular land, asking for water, but the water is always hidden, is always being protected by this evil monster, and then this foreigner comes and slays this monster, and then they're able to free the people, and then he marries the princess of but I realize for almost every ethno society it's very similar. Why is that?
When you come to the Limba people, which I am also Limba as well, my mother is Limba, I probably would say 80% of Limba stories is always about men chasing women, competing to win the heart of a woman, and will go through whatever exercises they need to do, they will do just to win just to win the woman one way or the other. And we've got numerous stories as well that do come across where where she's a beautiful girl but wouldn't marry anybody. I mean, there's an interesting story, for example, with a girl who says she would not marry anybody with any spot on his skin.
Mm.
That suitor has to come along but with not a single spot on his skin. You know, he's got to be smooth. I mean, smooth like a smooth criminal. And indeed, a criminal came. But these spirits, you know, who lived under the sea heard about this. And we call, in my language, in Limba, we say Waiyo. That's how we call a spirit, Wai. So so the Wai heard about this girl. So the Wai would come, and every village that he would pass, he would borrow an arm, you know, an arm that has no spot, another arm that has no spot, a leg that he would borrow from each village, a face that has no spot, a head, and he borrowed everything until he came. Of course, by the time he came to the girl, he was perfect with no spot at all. And he married this girl and then took the girl away. Now, different versions of this story is available, where the Y took the girl to the underneath the sea, and usually it's always underneath the sea. And again, all these are important elements. Everything when they talk about underneath the sea, there's so many important things about why they would use the seas. You know, few times they will use forest, but many times it is either
water related.
Yes, but you know, but mostly it's under the sea or it's come from under the ground. And like I said, there's many subliminal stories that they're telling there that has come from ancient times that is not necessarily being told obviously. You understand? They're just telling the children, you know, I'm gonna say why you, yeah, why you say, you know, mandi, why you know, and I just spoke my language there to you. So so you'll have this wife who would come, and in one version she will take the girl, and but as they kept going, parts of his body would start falling out because he would throw the body where he borrowed it. But of course, so he would like to leave all the parts until, you know, he became the real one that he truly is, and by then it's too late. The girl is kidnapped. There's others where the girl got rescued. There's others where the girl never dies. That's what she never dies. There's different versions of how this girl managed to survive there, but never does she die. And this story I found in Sierra Leone, from the Limbas to the Tiministe, all the way to Gambia and Senegal. I found the same story, and then there are different songs that accompany each story as well as you go across the whole place. So yeah, that's just, you know, a classic example of how one story is supposed to.
Yeah, and it's absolutely amazing how you will hear, you know, different versions of the story, you know, as you go to different societies.
Yes.
So to get on topic, which we're talking about the amazing narratives of Africa, your paradigm shift. It was originally the paradigm shift, but I want to talk about your paradigm shift in particular. As a storyteller, I know, you know, speaking to you first of all, listen, folks, we had like a 4-hour conversation, I think, Thursday night, and I couldn't do anything but lie down. My head was so hot because I learned so much in the process, and he gave me to think about. I'm like, oh my goodness, my head. I don't know how my head went. But, one of the things, you know, that came across totally is not only, you know, you being the storyteller, but stories being told to you, and how those stories have helped connect the dots. And, you know, and it's very important. I keep telling people oral history is extremely important. I love oral history because you learn so much about a culture, you learn so much about yourself, and in a wider context, you learn so much about the world and the universe, you know. So let's get into it. What are some of the amazing narratives that you have heard that has definitely changed your paradigm shift?
My very first encounter on a shift like this was in Detroit, and I had you know, got a scholarship to go to Detroit to do drama, and it was, you know, it was a very short stay, but I got to Detroit, And the school I went to at the time, I don't know if that school still exists, but it was called Northwestern High. And so we're there in the summer, and there's loads of other young American, African American boys and girls that we're all going to school with, and so on. And I had my drum, I had my traditional ronco that I wear with me. And you know, I wore my ronco to perform, I played my drum and so on. And we had the initial audition, and I was tops on the auditioning. And that was like the first thing, like, I'm tops in America. Oh, okay. All right. What's going on here? Now, I was a little bit really, because it wasn't just me, there was hundreds of us. When I say hundreds of us, like from all over America, the American young people who were all there with me. So then I started thinking, wow, okay, I've got something really special here. Now, why is that so significant? It's significant because you got to understand that in Africa, many of us look to America as the trend setter, as the place. So to suddenly be in a position where nobody could touch me out there on this basic stuff. I mean, for me, it was so basic what we were doing. But then I realized that a lot of the young boys and girls that I was in school there with didn't even have a clue what they were doing with the bass. And that shocked me, because my thinking is always that the American, you know, boys and girls, you know, they're tops there, you know, they know that, but only to realize that, nah, it's not like that. I found that many of these young people didn't really have the kind of knowledge that I had thought they had. So that was a big shift for me in terms of looking at, oh, okay, all right. So where do we go from here? And then I had my drum, I had my ronco, like I said, my traditional garment that I would wear. And people wanted my drum. They wanted my ronco. And in my head, I'm thinking, what do you want to do with this backward clothing? Why do you want a drum for? And then came the day when drummers were called in, playing djembe drum, playing all of these dances and stuff like that to as one of our lessons. Now, for me, this blew my mind, because this kind of traditional drumming in Sierra Leone at the time was considered absolutely backward, uncivilized, and so on.
Wow.
Here I am in the land that we are all dreaming to come to, and I'm in school, and the most magical thing is happening in front of me, because I am seeing my own drumming, my own native drumming happening right here in America. That totally blew my mind away. And I couldn't wait to get into the dance classes, because that was just my thing. And then, of course, I saw again a lot of these young boys and girls really struggling to get this correct. And I'm thinking, come on, guys, you can do better than this. Then, you know, so what happened subsequently is that I was being called to do other shows. And the next thing I know, I was playing the lead role. I was playing the lead role in the main play that we did, which was called Kurunmi. The drama school, drama lessons that we were having, everything I was doing, I was really tops at it. That was a major shift for me. A shift from a feeling of inferiority to a feeling of, I am just as good, if not even better. On top of that, it was a shift that I have something of immense value within my own cultural context. That gave me a tremendous confidence as a young man. At that time, I was only 20 years old. So as a young man coming in there, I found that it wasn't all the it wasn't all the gung-ho as people would make out, the American culture to be. That what I had has so much more depth.
Mm-hmm.
And what I had actually is the roots. And because it's the roots, it has a potential to grow in many different ways. Whereas what I saw these many young people had in America, they were only grafting. They were grafting to something else. And I found that for as long as you're grafting onto something else that is not necessarily your root, you'll only be fed that which you're grafted upon gives to you, which might not be the proper nutrients for you. And it will only give you for as much as it wants to give to you after it has first fed itself.
Mm.
So as plants that are grafted to whatever culture it is that they're grafting on there, they might only prosper, but only for so long because they don't have roots. That rooted plant can at any time cut them off, can at any time. And if that rooted plant dies, they die too.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
But you were that root then also gave it extra and new life.
Well, yes, I found that because I am rooted in my own. Well, a couple of things happened. You had some students who absolutely loved everything that I was about. You had some others who found me to be like, I'm just a bushman. I mean, we had a few arguments, but I could see for many of them, if they, now, for example, the school I went to in Sierra Leone is one of the best schools, Western-based best schools. Let me be more specific on that. And when I was going to school in Sierra Leone, I learned English, French, Latin, and including many other subjects. I learned American history, I learned European history, and so on. So my knowledge of America and Europe per se was relatively good. Also, my command of the English language was, hold on a second, please. Can you please turn that down a little bit? I'm having an interview here. Thank you. And also, my command of the English language, and again, we spoke the Queen's language. So my command of the English language was by far more superior to many of the students that I met there. And that became problematic for many of them. You see, because their expectation of this young man that has come from Africa is that he lives in trees. Is that, and this was a question asked to me many times.
Wow.
Yeah, they asked me that question. This was 1987. They asked me that question, and it was shocking for me, thinking, what? Is this what you think? So even before I answered, one of my friends who went with me, he was like, no. He said, yes, of course. He says the American ambassador lives in a very big tree. And the boys who were talking to her, nah, man, you kidding me? They said, no, we're not kidding you. You're the one who's kidding us. If you think we live in trees. But that was a major shift, during that time. So in a way, I don't know if I may use the word rediscovering myself, but I was finding myself, or I was kind of like rediscovering. I was finding things about me that I did not quite understand. And why do I say this? Because many young people in Africa all aim to be the American. So when America wears their trousers and tears the trousers all up, our young people will also wear their trousers and tear it all up. When the American, at that time, 1987, people carry this music, this big disco, not disco, but cassettes, boombox, right? They carry the boombox on their shoulders like this, and they be in the rap gang and so on. And then, there was break dancing. Anita Baker was out with, Sweet Love. Janet Jackson was just coming out as well with hers. So, LL Cool J was also there with I Need Love. And all these was what we were aiming for. This was, so coming from Sierra Leone, we're coming with all these break dancing stuff. And we wanted to go to America to prove that, yeah, look, we're also as American as well, But But when I got there, only to realize how empty it is. I mean, my latest play that I wrote called One Cowrie Shell, it's one of the things I addressed in this play called, the empty, shiny thing. And that's exactly what it was. It's an empty, shiny thing. It doesn't have any roots. And I found I have roots. And that shift was major in guiding me towards the trajectory that I am now into now. So when sorry.
No, go ahead.
So when I left America and came over to London in England here to stay, there was a big problem, major problem. And I think every African person would struggle with this at some point in their life. There's a duality that happens once you're going through this. The duality is that you think you're one thing, but you are actually another. And I'll explain what I mean by that. When I came to England, I wanted to study to become a lawyer. If people asked me what I want, I said, I want to become a lawyer. And then I realized I didn't like all the too much reading that the law thing, entails. Then I thought, well, I could be something. I mean, I was looking at every other thing else, but the arts, but theater, but storytelling or traditional dancing. I was looking at every other thing else. And then I started working in the theater anyway. Inside of me, I loved theater. It was the one time when I hold a script, my lights come on. And I literally can say, this is what made my heart sing when I see an audience really captivated with what I am doing. And that makes my heart sing. So I did it and carried on with it. But I was never seeing it as anything that serious. That's something that I could really take on. So I'm constantly dreaming that, God, my friends were doing law. My friends were doing, accounting. My friends were doing this, and did not necessarily see myself as a success for quite a while. This went on for quite a while. I tried everything else to do, whether it is plumbing, whether it is to study printing, whether it is study everything else, but looking at primarily what I thoroughly enjoy doing. Now, it took quite a number of years for me to get to a point where I say, okay, I formed my own theater group here, traditional theater company here in England, and toured around with many people from Senegal, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea-Bissau. All of them, we performed together, Burkina Faso. And I was there directing this group, producing a show with them. And with all of that success, I still thought I could do something else better.
Wow.
Yes, I still thought I could do something else better. Now, before I come to the other, because this is again another shift, is that I struggled so much with making this thing happen and making sense of why I'm thinking I want to do something else. And then I started examining myself a little bit deeper, and I realized a few things. Number one, the educational paradigm in Sierra Leone is purely that you go and you study these, what they call wonderful professions. Mm-hmm. The doctors, the architects, the whatever it is. You study all of these things. And then you go from a college, university, wherever, and you become successful. And if you want to sign your certificate for poverty, you choose to become an actor or an artist and so on. We don't even have a university. We don't even have a school to teach none of this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Especially that I chose the traditional form. That's even worse, because the people who do that are totally illiterate and they don't go to school and so on. And the word and illiteracy is associated to people who are ignorant, stupid, backward, blah, blah, blah. So I have chosen a profession that, or a life which has no intrinsic value according to what the paradigm is saying. It took me a while. So when I was doing all of that, my dad, for example, never went to any of my performances while I was in Syria. He never saw me or came to support me in school when I was doing theater there. As far as he was concerned, I was just this funny Michael Jackson son that he's now got. He never saw, and using the word Michael Jackson here is not about praise. It's literally derogatory. It's about saying, you know, and plus he wouldn't want me to speak my language. He preferred me speaking English. That was what was considered, that you are now civilized. You got to speak English, or you put a little bit of Latin in there. Better still if you speak French, that they don't understand at all. Now they say, this one, you got book in your head, you're a bookman. So when you've been hammered every day, you know, with this kind of narrative, it now means everything about yourself means nothing. It's absolutely worthless. So every sense of grandeur is from without, not from within. In a way, this is a microcosm of the entire African continent. Every sense of grandeur is from Europe or America, not necessarily from within Africa itself. I struggled a lot with that. Now, so because I was doing something that is rooted in Sierra Leone, I could not come to terms with the value of it, because nobody before me had been so successful doing traditional arts, where I can say, there is their lovely car that they drive, there is the lovely house that they built, there is this that they left, there is that, nothing. So it does mean that the only choices that I'm left with to see in terms of what marks success is a doctor, a lawyer, a politician, you know, an architect, a this, an accountant. Those were the marks. Nothing that it has to do that is from within the culture, within our own culture. And that has a major impact, which I did not quite understand. So from my dad not valuing my natural talent, then the society as a whole not valuing it as well. And then I got then out of the blue, I got a scholarship to go to America, hey-ho, to go and do it. Well, yes, but it was like a quick ticket to just go to America so I can do something else that is good to come back and impress my people. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? So now it is a situation now where I am now in England performing, everybody praising me of how successful I am or how talented I am and so on. But deep inside, the subconscious is not at one with this. Especially times when it gets tough, when there's not that much jobs and all that stuff. Those times were even worse. It's like you've chosen the wrong career. And friends, of course, were telling me, go to college, go and learn something else. But I stood my ground and said, look, I can't see anything else that my brain can take. To make it more on top of that is I found out later on that I was dyslexic. Now in Sierra Leone, people don't know what is dyslexia. I definitely know no teacher do not any there know what dyslexia is. But so when you're that, it means you of course have a different way of learning. And when teachers do not know what the issue is, and so there's no way to adapt learning for you, it now means they would think that you're stupid or they think that you're too slow. And that in itself have tremendous impact on your subconscious and on your confidence level and on your self-esteem. So all of these baggages I had with me when I went to America, when I realized, what, am I that good? Then left there, came over to England here, and I'm performing, and every stuff I'm doing, performing. So I was like, man, I've never seen somebody perform like this before, and so on. I was like, really? Is it that special? It took such a long time. Friends of mine started telling me, look, Yusuf, you got to do storytelling. And I'm like, storytelling? You must be kidding. You know, by this time in England, I only knew 2 people who did storytelling. Black people. I don't know, want to use the word African specifically. I'll say Black people for now. One was well, both of them from the Caribbean, but based here in England. And I have tremendous respect for these 2 people. But they kept telling me, you got to do storytelling. But I didn't, even though I was still performing storytelling when I went into schools and performing in schools all over England, I was still doing storytelling, but I was still doing traditional dances, traditional drumming. I was sewing costumes, blah, 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 for my theater groups and so on. But people kept telling me, Yusuf, your thing is storytelling. Eventually, after a good 20 or so years, I decided, okay, I'll do storytelling then. So now that was another shift. To say I'm going to do storytelling meant I stopped drumming. What I say I stopped drumming, I stopped giving drumming workshops. I stopped giving dance workshops, and I only focused on storytelling. So even when agents were calling me to do drumming workshops, I said, I'm not doing it no more. It's only storytelling. I did storytelling, and it was great. People really, 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 really loved it. Then I hit the crisis point. And the crisis point where, as an ambitious person, I want to be the best. And I want to reach levels where I'm earning good money enough to take care of a lot of the dreams I have in Sierra Leone and here. I have got to, this was pushing me. And but how do you do it? How do you shift from just an ordinary, quote unquote, an ordinary storyteller to a excellent storyteller, what I call today transformative storytelling?
Okay.
How do you make that shift? It was major for me. I wanted more money. But you see, the ancestors and Mother Nature has one question that they constantly ask everybody. And until you answer that question, the ancestors will not push you any further until you answer that question. And that question is simple. It's a very simple question. That question is, who are you? They're not going to answer it for you. You're the only one who's going to answer that question. Who are you?
But I have a question with that. I'm going to draw off of personal experiences too with this. You know, we've been, especially my family, and when I say my family, I mean primarily me and my mother and I, we've been grappling with that question, who are we, individually. And what we've realized, especially as a genealogist and historian, family historian here, we realized that a lot of our personality and who we are has been based off of generational insecurities that are not our own. So how do you answer that question when you realize, one, some of the insecurities you have, as you say, are societal based, and familiar based, as you stated with the leaving, Sierra Leone, coming to America, and especially in our context, you have slavery. One overarching notion is, in my family, and my mother's side at least, is that we are not worthy, we are not valuable, we are not valued. Who do you think you are? It's that underlining message all the time. For me, for example, if I went into broadcasting, when majority of my family members were teachers, professors, headmistresses, headmasters, lawyers, who are you to go into broadcasting? You know, and at the time I went to broadcasting, you know, especially in the Caribbean, especially in Barbados, it wasn't really, and especially the music field, wasn't deemed respectful. So it's like, oh, it's just you're wasting your time. And unfortunately, I became the black sheep of the family, but that I didn't care about that. I just knew that I had to do what I had to do. But now that I'm older and now that I'm a historian, I realize a lot of what I've done in my life, for example, especially broadcasting, has been to say, look at me. I speak to millions of people. Can't you see how valuable I am? And it's like, well, wait a second. I never thought of it that way. You get where I'm coming from? The things you've done in your life is not necessarily, not that you don't like to do it, but sometimes you're trying to combat that message that has been beaten into you for generations and generations. And then I had to sit back and say, but wait a second. If that's the case, then who am I? What do I like to do? You know, let me look into this further. And then when I looked into it, I realized that my grandmother has that same mentality on my mother's side, in terms of she doesn't feel valued. She feels worthless to a point. This is I mean, she wouldn't say it, but you know, this is the underlining message. And then you ask her about her mother, and it's the same thing. And I'm like, well, if it was like that with my man, which is my great grandmother, it must have been like that for her mother. You get where I'm coming from? And I come to find out it was like that with my great great uncles, and I'm like, wow. So my question is, how for someone like us, you know, who are descendants of enslaved people, how do we go by answering that question, knowing that a lot of us might not be able to pinpoint that our actions are based off of trying to combat that underlining message, but like, how do you move forward from there, and how do you answer that question, you know, in lieu of the ancestors and the, you know, you get where I'm coming from?
I do. I get where you're coming from. um, um, there are many levels to this. There are really different levels to this question. You could answer the question from in terms of the tools point of view, when I talk about being born and then you are choosing your ori. You can answer it first from that angle and say that what I am is a carpenter. I'm a fixer of wood and stuff like that. You could say, like I said, I am a storyteller. You know, I'm an architect for social change and cultural awakening. Like I said that. So, and that came to me after so many years of trying to figure out this question in terms of the career. But in terms of you know, in terms of figuring out my tool, what we call career really is just your tool. And I think it's important, first of all, that you know what is your tool that you're coming here with. You found your tool is to literally shout out loud to people on many different things and give people many different type of information. That is your tool. That is the tool you use to serve many people. You bring many, many, many different things. You put it out there and you, hey, look, guys, look at this one here. And it is a very important tool. You are a griot. I don't like to use the word griot per se. I rather use the word jali. You're a jali who gathers information from every different places, and you help to make people inform. You help to put people, shall I say, in form. So you give people inside alignment, inside formation.
Wow.
That is what you do. This is why you and I are having this conversation. What you're figuring out is an inside alignment. You're asking me to tell my story. You're asking me to tell the shifts that I've made. That is information, inside formation. And people who will listen to us after this will also check themselves out and get a way to align themselves or realign themselves properly. You see? And that's the kind of person you are. You find all of the different stuff and you're broadcasting it to people. Now, when you know that's your tool, that is a good start to know this is who I am. Then you get another level where you begin to look at bloodline in terms of DNA and all this stuff. You get that level as well, and that is a tricky one because, but thankfully for technology today, people are able to take a DNA and they trace where they have come from, if you like, or where the DNA goes, and that usually it can be endless in a way because it can go so far, and and how far do you want to take it? But that's important too, because once you know that where your DNA is, what it begins to do for you is you begin to see. I mean, genetics today are studying things where if there's an illness in a particular bloodline, they try to figure out how they could eradicate that illness so it doesn't affect you no more. When you go to a doctor, the doctor asks you, does anybody in your family has diabetes? Anybody in your family has this and that? They can see. That's another level of who you are, because you see, you and I looking at each other right now, we may not know what our great-great-great-grandmother looks like or great-great-great-grandfather looks like. But guess what? Their nose is sitting right on top of our face. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So your complexion, being born in, whether it's in America or Barbados or wherever, your very complexion points you to one place. Africa, West Africa per se. And what it does mean is that your whole body has a memory that is phenomenal. Your whole body carries more memory than your brain could ever think of carrying. Your whole body. This is why every single part of your body, you see somebody walking, he walks just like his grandfather. She walks just like, he's doing exactly what that person did there. And this is why our people would name children sometimes after certain ancestors that have gone by, because they are making sure they know that child knows. There's the Himba people, for example, that has a very interesting story about a child being born, where they say that the child's birth date is the date that the mother had the thought of having that child. Oh. That is the birth date of the child. And that child gives a song to the mother.
Yes.
And that rhymes fine. You know that story. Yes. Great. Now, so.
But say it to the people who might not know it, because it's very powerful.
Okay, all right. So the mother listens for that song. When she gets that song, she goes and sings that song and teach that song to her husband to be, until she gets pregnant, give birth to the child. She sings the song to the child. The community learns this song. That child grows up. The child gets married. They sing the song to the child. Then even before the child gets married, if the child goes into a bit of problem and causes a trouble there, they will gather the child in the center. They surround the child and sing the song to the child. Child gets married, they sing the song, gets older, until the child now is a grown-up man and a woman, and then dies, and they still sing the song to say goodbye to this particular child. Now, why is that? Is to constantly remind you who you are, constantly. So like a rudder in a ship, that song keeps you steady. It keeps you, this is who I am. So no matter whatever you might do, it's important you come back to who you are. Very important. So this is why people usually would say, so maybe somebody does something and they say, it's in the blood. Mm-hmm. You see, they'll use the word. Now, genetics and scientists will say it's in the genetics. Mm-hmm. Well, it's in the genealogy. They could use whatever big words they want to use. African people just say it's in the blood.
Mm-hmm. It's true. It's true.
And that's all. That is how people understand precisely what you're saying. So now, what's important about that for me as well, this is just as an aside, what's important about that is, while people are thinking that it is only the Western science that has all these answers, I want people to think again. Our people already said it's in the blood. They knew this long before Europeans started coming out with any form of their own sciences and education. This is not something complicated. So kingship and all this stuff, they kept the blood. It is not just the royal family of England or these other places that know anything about the blood. Our people knew that you keep things like this, and it's all, they have their own royal blood. So they understood what this thing that they've called DNA means. It's not strange for our people. The language might be strange, but the very principles are not strange. It's like telling our people Pythagoras theorem and that our people don't know Pythagoras theorem. That is absolutely silly. Our people were doing Pythagoras theorem long before Pythagoras ever came about. Right. No, they may have called it a different name, but they were, otherwise, how did they build pyramids? How would they have built a lot of these structures that they built before if they didn't understand many of these mathematical principles? Anyway, that's just as an aside. But even that as an aside, when we're talking of knowing yourself, this is what we also have to know, that what's in your DNA is a line of cells, of vibration, that were architects, that were brave, that built stuff, that did a lot of amazing stuff within their own era. It's that you carry a self that traveled across the Sahara, that lived in a jungle with animals and preserved it all. You got to know in yourself that you lived with people who had languages right across the board and spoke so many different languages. You also got to know that in your very self as well, that you have within your blood cell people who may not have written, quote unquote, written English or written whatever it is they want to say. But writing alphabet is such a small, tiny, insignificant thing when it comes to literacy, because they were so much more advanced that they wrote with hairstyle. They wrote with their Adinkra symbols. They wrote with leaves and plants that they might put in the forest for you to understand the signs and languages. They wrote with their dances. They wrote with their drums. They communicated, because if writing is all about communicating and preserving a way of life, a culture, an education system, our people did all of this very, very successfully. They did it through, like I said, through the hair that they plaited, through even how they tied, they wrapped their head, through the clothes, the designs they put in there. Every single thing they did, they communicated and passed on messages that still lived on today. I would not talk now if we say to go to any places like Egypt or those places where they actually wrote on the walls and put so much more there. So who are you in the macro sense as an African person, as a Black person? Who are you? Now you got to know that what's running in your DNA is what's making us the fastest man on the planet. Who are you? It's what making you the Floyd Mayweathers, the best boxers in the entire universe. It's what's making the Muhammad Alis. It's what's making so many of the great, great, great intellectuals that we have that are powerhouses, but the people are scared. But here's the thing about who you are, is to understand that your perception of Earth, of the world that we live in, of the universe, is entirely, if not almost 100%, I dare say, okay, and I might be wrong with this one, but I'm just saying that it is so different to the vision, to the way any other nation would see the planet Earth. You, a Black person, you're an African. So who are you when you ask that question? You got to understand it. It's different. The way a European sees the planet is about fighting wars, grabbing other people's land, taking resources, keeping it for themselves. That's how they see the planet. Check their whole history.
And when you talk about the fact that everything is communication, to me, that's paying respect to the environment, is paying respect to the energies of the environment. The mere fact that, I want to do a video on textiles in Sub-Saharan Africa. And it was amazing how, from the cotton, from the time it's grown, how it is what's the word? Respected.
Yes.
To how they create these wonderful clothing and the meanings behind them. It's So yeah, I totally understand. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because that is where we've come from. You know, yesterday, the past 2 days, I've been learning a lot about a lot of European history, like going back, and I just went all the way back Russian history, right across the days of Bismarck and what's his name, Napoleon, and all it. And just look at them, and everything is just war, fight, kill, fight, take other people's land, fight, 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 fight. And I stopped, and then this morning before I got out of bed, I said, let me just check my own history a little bit. So checking African history, it's a different ball game.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a different ball game. When I looked at our history, then now that is not to say we didn't have wars. Of course, we certainly had wars. But my goodness, in comparison, we don't even come close.
Listen, even if you look at the Songhai Empire, right? That's relatively that's early in comparison
Yes.
to our vast history. You
Yes.
know, one of the things I really appreciate about the Songhai Empire is the fact that you could be still traditional, practice just your I don't want to call it religion, but you know,
Yeah.
your traditional
The spirituality.
spirituality. You
Yes.
know, and you can still resolve any conflict in your traditional way. And they didn't impose this sense of imperialism. You have to learn Arabic, you have to convert to Islam. They didn't do that. They allow people to live, even though they conquered other states and other territories, they
Mm-hmm.
still allow people to be who they are.
Exactly. And that's a big difference.
Yes.
This is why I'm saying that when we're looking at who we are, that we do not look at who we are in an inferior sense. And I think many people make that mistake. We look at who we are and think, oh, you know, it's so inferior to what? No, I say we're different. That is all I say. And indeed, we are different. Our environment that we live in makes us behave differently, just as much as the environment that Europeans live in makes them behave differently. When you're in a harsh climate like there, you will behave differently. Whether it's in the Arabs who live in another harsh desert climate, you will behave differently.
Mm-hmm.
To us who come from abundance, we behave differently. We fight wars for totally different purposes.
Mm-hmm.
The Songhai Empire that you mentioned, and the Songhai, the Mali, or the Sokoto Empire,
Mm-hmm.
these were most of these ones came about because of Islam. And when Islam came in, then they brought a fight, a different culture coming in again from a totally different kind of people. So
Mm-hmm.
their approach again is entirely different. So Bantus in the African per se, who we are, our approach is different. Now, so what tends to happen when we look at who we are, we tend to see ourselves and say, well, we did not build big, tall buildings. We did not, put it. No, we didn't need to.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody says, well, we didn't have chariots. We did not have wheels. Well, we didn't need to.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? We didn't need to. They needed to.
Mm-hmm.
What we put was based on what we need. I go to my backyard, there's a mango.
Mm-hmm.
I go to my backyard, there's a fruit, there's this, there's that. Why do I need to carry a chariot? How can I ride a chariot in a forest?
It's true.
Or you live in a desert, you can ride a chariot. God bless you for that.
Mm-hmm.
You need it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. So when they come in and then they define us by their own values, now we have a problem now, because we are, let us say you're a fish and you're being defined by your ability to climb a tree as a monkey. Two different ball games altogether. And I think this is a major shift that Africans, Black Africans, Africa, right across the world need to grapple with. That we are not the same as the European. The European needed to wear a tie on his neck, otherwise he will freeze. We never needed that. Our climate is hot. So we have taken that and we're using that paradigm to measure our people for intelligence. So our children wear a tie in broad, hot daylight to go to school. Doesn't make sense.
I don't know how you do it. I was in Ghana. I saw some in full suits. How? Yes, I totally understand. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So that question of who are you? You begin to ask that. And then so if we begin to peel everything off, we will begin to we've got to come to understanding this, who we are, and understand that if I'm walking around Africa, as Fela says, I'll not be gentleman at all. I'll be African man, original. He says, Africa hot, I like am so. But my friend don't know. He says, here I know what to wear. He says, but my friend who don't know, he put him socks. He wear his necktie. He wear his suits, his long sleeve. He wear his singlet. He wear his trousers. He come and he cover it with his coat and he put a big hat on top of his head.
Mm-hmm.
He says he is a gentleman. He says you give him food. He does not eat much. He says because he's a gentleman, he says his belly is full. What kind of man are you? Me, as an African man, you give me food, I will eat good. Fela sang it and not be gentleman at all. Mm-hmm. And this is a powerful statement of who you are. Fela Kuti embraced that he sits in his house, doesn't wear clothes, doesn't wear much on his body, and people think, oh, why is he not wearing anything? Well, it is damn hot. What do Europeans do in the summer? They strip off. Mm-hmm. So our people say they don't wear much. Why? Because it's too hot. What's the point? You see? Now, this kind of thought drives fear in the minds of many African American people, and indeed many Africans who may have come to Europe and may have go to America and become civilized. This thought drives the fear of God inside of them. Why? Because they now think, oh, I'll lose my tie. I will not be civilized anymore. I'll lose my coat. I will not be civilized anymore. I'll lose my car. I will not be civilized anymore. But instead, let's understand who we are. We are protectors of the environment. Who we are, we're caretakers of environment. This is why Africans have lived for millennia years and fish flourished, elephants flourished, rhinos flourished. All of these different species, the trees, everything, they all flourished. Because we could live with everything. We could live with harmony with everything and allow it to flourish in its natural form.
It's true.
Comes any other of the nationalities that you might want to think about, whether it's Europeans or whatever, bring them along. They could not live agreeably with nature. They had to kill it. Mm-hmm. So they came in barely 100 or so years. Rhinos are almost extinct. Elephants are almost extinct. This is dying, that is dying, that is dying, that is dying. They shoot for game. So the culture, who they are in terms of identity, does not agree with nature. Today, they're saying they've got to develop environmentally friendly behavior. Well, don't teach an African person about environmentally friendly behavior. It is what we embody. So who are you? You are nature. You are an embodiment of nature. What is nature? God. So this is so important that we understand. So when we're asking ourselves, who are you? And I see more you as a Black person, as an African American person, as an African person. You got to understand that when you can, when you can know that, that's one step. That's one step. But the major shift comes when you can accept who you are. Mm. That's the major shift. Because you may know it, but you don't accept it. You deny it. In fact, you'll find every way to justify why it can't be. Well, what about the other humans? They are also a part of it. Well, what about this other one? They're also there. And we're the ones who find all the justifications for this. When in fact, the others who are other human beings, if you like, they're constantly telling us, you're not like us.
It's true.
But we're not seeing this. We're not sitting and accepting this. Of course I am not like you. My history is not like you. My DNA is not like you. My makeup is like, the food I eat is not like you. Because if I was like you, I would have grown the same hair. I would have grown the same thing. But I'm not. Therefore, my constitution calls for a different way of belief, a different way of seeing the universe, and totally different altogether.
We're here with Usifu Jalloh, and we'll be right back. We're going to take a break, but we'll be back definitely with part 2. all right, with this amazing conversation. Oh man, I'm loving every moment of it. Thank you. We'll be right back.